Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a couple housekeeping items to go over, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the content. Heather Zecker is here with me behind the scenes, so she's going to monitor the question panel there just in case anybody has any challenges or has any questions. I'm not alone, and she'll be able to help us through that. There is a copy of the presentation out there for you if you want to download it. It is in the handout section. So on the right of your screen, you probably see a panel there with some options. That's also where you want to go ahead and enter any questions that you might have. Along the way, we will be asking you poll questions. That's important for us to be able to offer those CPE credits. So please make sure that you do answer those pretty quickly so it doesn't stall us out. We do have to get 80 to 85% participation in order for them to qualify. And along the way, we'll pause a little bit, see if there's any immediate urgent questions. We certainly will try to have some time left at the end to answer any questions that you have. And then if we aren't able to get to all of your questions, we will reach out to you individually and answer those. And if it's something that we see a lot of people have interest in, we might just do a mass push out of a frequently asked question document or guide, etc. But as far as housekeeping, if you are having any audio challenges, you might want to call in on your cell phone or your landline, whichever type of phone that you're using today, because sometimes it's a little bit more reliable than the computer audio. So we are excited to have you here. We know this is a very important topic to all of you. And while I wish I had the pixie dust and I wish I had all the answers, I'm going to admit I don't have all the answers. But what you can expect from today is a collection of insights, experiences, observations, and just thoughts that I have about how we move forward from here into the rest of 2022 and then into 2023. So you might be asking, well, why did you start with retention? Well, retention, if we keep our people, we don't have to work so hard to find people, which is also a very big challenge. So if that too is one of your worries or concerns or keeping you up at night, we absolutely will be talking about that next month. So make sure to dial in at that time. So we're going to go ahead and dig right in here to the topic of the day, the retention strategies for 2022. And today's objective really is to help you elevate your retention strategy. It's not cookie cutter, and one idea or suggestion is not going to solve it all. But what you can do is make incremental improvement or changes or just think about things differently. And that's my hope for you today, is that you're inspired by some of the ideas and experiences, that it will allow you to think differently, be able to be a little bit more strategic moving forward. And if you're still scratching your head at the end of today's session, it's okay. You don't have to have it all solved, but certainly I'm here as a resource, as well as many others here at Stan Boness, to help you get through it and just continue to elevate what you do and how you do it. So before we get too far down the path, I do want to start with our first poll question, and Heather's going to launch this for us. I'm curious, normally I would put this after I speak for a little bit, but I am interested to know, what is the reason you have recently lost employees, whether it's one or multiple? And you might be thinking, yeah, I connect with a couple of these on this screen. So there is that all of the above option as well. So we'll go ahead and just monitor to make sure we get to that percentage that I talked about. And then we will release the results, so that way all of you can see where your peers are at and where other companies are, maybe in your industry, outside of your industry. What are some of the things that they're seeing? So we have a little bit further to go here. And certainly if you have not lost any employees, I am so excited for you because it does definitely seem that there's movement out there in the workforce. People just deciding to do something different, right? And then might be prompted by one or more of the reasons listed here on the screen.
Okay, Christy, we're going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results.
All right, great. So it looks like all of the above. You have been hearing that from the people departing, and certainly maybe you're getting some feedback that allows you to influence those from not officially stepping away, but reconsidering their choice. And so it does look like compensation is a big worry. Please know I did receive feedback prior to this session today that compensation is something top of mind, but I purposely put it towards the end of the session, and I'll tell you why when we get there. And actually, you'll probably have a hint of it here as we move forward on the next couple slides. But yeah, career change, that too seems to be a compelling reason of why people are making a change. It's been rough the past 2 years. And as they think forward, they're like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. So thank you very much, Heather, for sharing those results. We greatly appreciate it. So retention is not one key thing, right? There are multiple key ingredients. And if any of you like to cook, you know that we all could be given the same ingredients, but we all could put it together in a unique and different way, right? So eggs, we could scramble them, we could hard boil them, many different options. So when you have these key items or ingredients that are listed on the screen, and you put them together in a unique way, it's going to be different than maybe the person sitting next to you. And so you as an organization will pull them together in a unique way and figure out what is it going to take for you to keep your talent, what excites them, what gets them motivated, and so forth. So each of these key items we will be talking in further depth as we move throughout the session today. So if any of them are jumping out at you, don't worry, we will spend a little bit of time on each one of those. This next slide here, some of you have probably seen it if you've attended any of our recent webinars. If not, I'll take one moment to explain it, but I did put it in here with intention. So Stambaugh Ness recognizes that without people, we don't have a service, right? And without people, we can't make widgets. So at the end of the day, people is the critical piece to any organization. And so swirling around here, we call it our noodle or the infinity symbol, whatever you want to call it. There are things that we have to be mindful of every single day as we think about our workforce and think about the people experience, not only in our organization at Stambaugh Ness, but also in the way that we can help our clients be successful. And through there, we need to be anticipatory with the way that we think. We need to look at the trends, what is impacting the environment in which we compete or we're trying to find or keep our talent, and what can we do to stay ahead of that curve, right? And so it's an infinity or never-ending loop around because we always have to be thinking about these key items here that are listed, and I won't read them all to you, but it's not where we can just check it off our to-do list and say, well, we did that. No, you're constantly going to have to be thinking about all of these. And I wanted it in front of you for this conversation because we have to think about our people and we have to think about what's going to keep them with us and hopefully have them excited about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and so forth. One of the key drivers with an individual's engagement or excitement about your organization is the motivation. And so on the left-hand side here, it's the satisfiers, those things that truly motivate. And then on the right-hand side, you have the dissatisfiers, those hygiene factors that really, if you improve it a little bit, it's not going to give you a one-to-one ratio, if you will, on increasing somebody's motivation. And so you can research this, Hertzberg's motivational theory. But what's interesting, if you look at the first one on the right-hand side, salary. So while we all think it's compensation that motivates, it's really not. Now, if compensation is too far off and you're paying significantly under what the competition is, then that will detract from somebody's motivation very quickly. So if you think about working conditions and you think about relationships and so forth, that truly, they're important, and it's okay if we don't use it to try to motivate, as long as we're not doing something that really significantly takes away or reduces or negatively impacts the individual. So that's one of the reasons that compensation is towards the end. It's important, and we're going to talk about why it's important today, more so than maybe a year or so ago, but it's not just the number one thing that's going to keep the people with you long term. So we have in front of us the perfect storm, or maybe it's not so perfect, right? Because we have a lot of things happening. We have the war for talent, which was here prior to the pandemic and the C word. We're not going to dwell on those, but we already were starving for talent. And there was a couple of reasons for that. We've got a good economy. We've got baby boomers who are moving out of the workforce and so forth. But now we layer on that the Great Resignation. And so the Great Resignation is that people are deciding to move. They're switching jobs. Maybe they're relocating to a different part of the country and your organization can't accommodate them working that far away from your business. And so we have that swirling around, in addition to what some are calling the silver tsunami. And so that is really all of those individuals who are 55 and older that are choosing to step away, maybe more quickly or not. And so that's impacting our ability to keep our staff, right? We can't tell them they can't retire. They've worked their whole life for that. But then, you know, we also got to think about just the impact of trying to find the talent to maybe replace those skill sets, or maybe it's new skill sets. But what about all that knowledge and wisdom stepping away, right? And so these items have all come together in a way that we haven't seen before, or definitely not in the distant past, or near past, I should say. And so I just wanted to take a moment here to talk about some of the statistics that are in front of us, because this isn't going away. The storm is not just going to end like a thunderstorm you would see here, maybe in central Pennsylvania or another part of the country. It's going to be here for the rest of the year and into 2023 and maybe beyond. Really depends if there's something else that comes along to disrupt us. But as you can see here, we have about half of the baby boomers who have retired as of the end of last year, right? Well, there's 78 million baby boomers, so there's still 30+ million in the workforce. And what was really interesting when you look at this slide, look how many people 75 and older are still working. You got 14%. And it's like, wow, why are they staying? Is it because they don't have any other hobbies, or is it because financially they need to? So while we have those 30 million baby boomers who, if they retired at age 65, might be out of the workplace in the next 10 years, I don't think it's as doom and gloom as I originally expected, because people are working longer. So we're going to be able to keep them a little bit longer in our workforce, but you can see we have a tremendous amount of people that will be leaving our organizations and impacting what we do. And there's not much that we can do to solve that, right? Other than if we get them to stay on with us in a part-time capacity until we can bring in the person who succeeds them or develops the skills and abilities that they have that will help take the company into the future. So let's dig in here to purpose, okay? This you might call your mission, values, and vision, and so forth, but it is a critical piece of our organization. And as you think about what it takes to be a successful business, we have an image up here. It is from a tool that we call Sprocket. And so it really represents those critical pieces of our organization that have to work well together in order for us to do what we do in the best way possible. And you can see purpose is at the forefront of that. We're not going to be able to spend time on this whole diagram today, but don't worry, in the near future, you will be hearing more about it. So for today, we're going to talk about purpose, and we're going to talk about culture. So purpose really comes down to, why do we do what we do? Why do we get up every day, get excited about the service we provide or the products that we produce? Why is that, right? And so when you find your true purpose, as this quote here states, you want to align it in a way that it excites you every single day. And you want to have every business decision point back to that purpose. Does it make sense? Does it align with who we are and what we choose to do? And if you think about any nonprofit organization that you have been connected to in a volunteer capacity or were a member of and so forth, if you think about the purpose, it really is compelling for people to volunteer their time and rally around a cause, and it's really stands out. And you could pick any number of nonprofit out there. And that's what we really need in our organizations, because the younger generations, that's what they want. They want to know that the energy they're putting forth to something has meaning, has value, helps the community immediately or more largely around them. And what is that true impact that they have? So if your mission statement is in your handbook and you don't even know the words within it, then I'd say it might be time for you to revisit that. Or if it's on the wall and people just don't truly understand, well, who even decided that that was going to be our mission statement? I would challenge you to put this on your to-do list, to really give thought to, who are we? Why do we do what we do, especially knowing what the future may hold for your organization and your industry? So let's go ahead and do our next poll question. I'm interested to know, does your purpose really drive every decision that's made in your organization? So as you're thinking about some of the big decisions that, you're thinking about, should we add a product or service line? Should we acquire a business? Should we discontinue something because it's just not as profitable? To even the small decisions that the people out on the line or out on a project site, are they thinking about the purpose when they're making a decision, especially an important one, maybe a critical one? And are they really thinking about, does this align with who we want to be and what we want to do? And we are about 67%, so we need just a little bit more here. All right, and if you're not sure, it's okay, just pick one. I promise we're not going to hold you to this.
All right, Christy, we're going to go ahead and close that poll down and see where we landed.
All right, so in many cases, you do believe, at least sometimes, you are thinking about the purpose when you're making your decisions. We have quite a few of you who say absolutely, and then some of you who just aren't sure or say no, we don't. So hopefully you can take this information back to your team and just talk to them about, maybe we should look at it from a different perspective, or just reconnect to it and communicate out, and hopefully use it to help drive business forward. So culture, we're going to spend a little bit of time here too. Everybody talks about culture. Everybody has their own definition of what culture is or isn't. And so I would challenge you to think about, what do you want that culture to be? Who are you? And what is special about your organization? How are you unique? And, you have to have this shared set of beliefs that are not only supported and help align with your purpose, but also by the way that you do things or the people that you pursue to do business with, and so forth. And so there's an article here that the Society of Human Resource Management has, helping you to better understand, how do we take our culture, evaluate it, and then develop it in the way that we want it. And so culture isn't something that's like a light switch. You can't turn it on or off, but it is a collection of things that you do, and it's a collection of those shared values and beliefs. And if you bring too much toxicity into it, it could have a negative impact. But it could also, if you bring the right people into your organization and you start doing the things you're passionate about, it could be a really rewarding experience for you as a leadership team, for your employees, and just you as an individual. So here are a couple things that we need to be thinking about going forward with our culture. It has been disrupted, and we didn't even choose for it to be disrupted, right? We now have this thing called remote work. We also have some other maybe regulatory items that we have to adhere to because we came out of this pandemic, still in some cases living through that pandemic. So one of the things from a people perspective that we have to give thought to is the way that we connect, right? I can't just talk to somebody who's sitting next to me, have a conversation, or allow them to overhear how I handle a conversation with a client or a vendor or a partner, etc. And so when I'm sitting at home, working from home, there's nobody else here. And so me as an individual, I don't have the opportunity to learn from others. And then as a leader, I have to give thought to, well, how am I still going to encourage learning and growth and sharing of insights and experiences and so forth? And I'll admit, I don't have it all figured out yet, but it is one of my biggest worries, is about how do I continue to do it better, so that way I can make sure that the people who are around me, working with me on the same team or in the organization elsewhere, that they can feel that connection. Because prior to 2020, the general rule of thumb was that if somebody feels connected to the organization within 6 months, they're going to stay. But if they don't, they're going to leave. Well, I think that window might be shorter now, especially because you're isolated if you work for a company where your position is a remote one, either fully or in part. And so I challenge you to rethink how you handle conversations. Some of you may have heard me say this recently, but years ago, I was opposed to the water cooler talk, right? I'm like, there's not a lot of constructive conversation that happens at the water cooler. Yes, sometimes there are. But I would be like, look, if there's something that's bothering you, worrying you, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to solve it so we don't have to have these side chatter conversations. Well, we have gone from that place to virtually having none, and it's hurting us because I don't know about you, we jump on these virtual meetings and right away we're talking about the topic, right? It's either the agenda or it's a specific problem we're trying to solve, etc. And through that, we aren't having those casual conversations where I get to know you as a person, understand what your hobbies are, your interests, and so forth. So I'm telling you, put the water cooler back in those conversations. I reserve the right to change my mind again in the future, but those are important, especially as if you're a leader. Take the first couple minutes and ask somebody, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Well, you know that that's not typically the response they give you. They say more along the lines like, yeah, it's great, blah, blah, blah. So pay attention to just those subtle little details and figure out how you open the door to get them to talk with you. Because if they're feeling sheltered, isolated, and not having the ability to talk and share feelings, thoughts, and so forth, they're going to go to an organization that embraces that a little bit more. So I know that was a little long-winded and I do apologize, but connection is really critical when you think about retaining your employees. People want to know they have a friend. People want to know that you care. People want to know that, hey, I have friends and I have a team that I can work really well together, even if we don't sit next to each other. So Daniel Burrus is somebody who we have embraced his teaching, his concepts, and all of you have heard us talk about it, I'm sure, on one or many of our webinars. But I do want to call to the forefront here 4 key terms that he talks about. And when you're thinking about the connection you have with your team or the organization, think about, are people just cooperating because that's what they think they need to do because they don't want to cause waves or they don't feel like they could challenge an idea? Or do you see collaboration happening? Is it a two-way conversation where people are talking and trying to solve bigger problems and everybody feels included, and sometimes you're expanding that group that you're collaborating with, sharing ideas? Give thought to how that is in your organization. Do people truly feel like they can collaborate with you or with teams or not? Are they sitting there just taking it in and saying, okay, I'll do it, and taking the command and so forth? The next one here is informing versus communicating. So it's easy to inform someone through email, right? Tell somebody something and then they either take action on that or do something with the information or file it away. But that two-way communication is critically important. Critically important so you can understand what's going on in the world of that individual, understand where some of their challenges are, where are the growth opportunities, what's motivating that person, and then also just that connection and that relationship. So if you find that you're constantly just talking all the time and sharing information, maybe pause and see if you can create that two-way communication. Today, I'm demonstrating informing and I'm sharing one way, but I would love for us to be sitting around a table where we could collaborate and then communicate both ways. First impressions are really important. So while we'll be talking about recruiting and onboarding in our next webinar in May, it is so very important what we do from the time that we say hello to somebody, or even at the time that they become aware of us. Do they truly understand what it's like to work for the organization? Do we have videos out there or pictures or something on our website to just truly demonstrate the commitment that the organization has to the people, to the culture, and getting them really excited? Because if we don't, there's an area of opportunity for us to be able to toot our own horn, if you will, and just share why it's exciting to be here at this organization. And then it gives those individuals who work with you the opportunity to repeat that information. Some may not naturally be able to say why somebody else would want to come to the organization, especially when you have generational differences. Some of your employees may not even know how to talk to somebody in a different generation in a way that excites them to come work for you. So first impression is really important. I talked about connecting an individual to the organization. That impacts retention. but it's also what else can we do with those first impressions we're leaving to talk about how we're unique and different so people are choosing us and that people continue to be excited about our organization. So now let's talk about growth. Growth opportunities. This is really important. Many people want to continuously learn. Some feel like they're forced to. And so it is really important for people to be curious and to understand what are the opportunities out there for me. And while you can't force people to learn, it truly is something that individuals want. They want to expand their skill set. They want to learn something new. And others, could be very naturally taken down bunny trails, and you got to reel them back and say, well, we got to get some work done. We can't just continuously learn. But we want to encourage a learning environment within our organizations, and it doesn't always have to cost a ton of money, right? And so as you think about growth and development, it could be having somebody work on a different type of job or task, have them connected to a different type of project that is either just variety or complexity. Think about maybe having individuals work with other people outside of their immediate team. It gives them that rounded experience where they get to collaborate with other people. They get to maybe think in new and different ways, and you share those experiences and insights. And all of that doesn't cost a thing other than the labor being allocated maybe to a different portion of your organization. Yes, you can still send people to classes and send them to college for, a degree, etc. But quite honestly, with the technology in front of our fingertips and we have the ability to access data and information and knowledge pretty quickly and easily, so it's bite-sized moments that we can help people really get connected to the things that are going to help them grow and develop. This is one area where I would like to see companies become more intentional with what they do and how they do it, helping employees figure out what is that path for them going forward. And, what are those skills and what are those things that they need to be able to do? So as you think about critical thinking or problem solving, some of those intangibles, being able to build relationships or handle conflict, work through a client issue, or maybe a challenge where machinery is just not working as efficiently as it should. Those moments are what we really need to focus on and help people carve that path for them. And I know it takes energy, and I know that companies don't have extra resources all the time to carve out, one person to solely focus on the learning and development. And so I'm mindful of that. And I know it's not always easy, but you have to put time on your calendar to figure it out. Even if you can only devote 30 minutes, at least start making progress of how you can help your team feel like they're learning and growing every single day, and talk about that, communicate the things that the organization is doing and embracing and encouraging, whether it's partnering people up as mentors and mentees, or if there is a very specific learning plan because you want to increase the ability to build business on business development, whatever that might be, talk about it so people know that, hey, the company is committed to helping all of us learn and grow. Even though we don't talk about it every day, I know that they do support that. Because if they don't feel like you support that and you're all about just get the work done and focus on the task of the day, that might be a reason that they're prompted to leave. Talking to somebody recently, they wanted that flexibility and that opportunity to learn and grow, and they didn't feel like they had it at their organization. And so my feedback to the company would be, hey, what can we do to be more promoting the things that we're doing? We're committed to those things that the leadership team believe are important to just help us all move forward and continue to learn and grow. One area that leadership is going to have to lean in harder on is the ability to handle change. So we were disrupted. Many companies were in a good place to set up shop and have people working from home. Many other companies were not in that good place, and that's disruptive because it's all of a sudden, it's immediate, and we didn't even have time to adjust leading up to when it happened, right? Doors closed, everything shut down, work from home. And I don't want to dwell on the pandemic, but that's not the last time that a significant change is going to happen, whether it's industry specific or people specific. Change will always happen. And when it's transformative, when it's all of a sudden and it's a major disruptor, think about if you've ever changed an ERP system or implemented a new technology, that's disruptive. You got to change behaviors and so forth. Well, quite honestly, many people, when they come out of school, they're not taught how to lead people, how to manage people. And hopefully along the way, they've had a great mentor or learning experience where they have the ability to get those skills. But in many cases, if you're focused solely technically on your profession, you may not have been given the skills needed to, one, deal with change yourself, then also to help employees move through that. And as you can see on this screen here, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of things that people go through as they're trying to let go of the past, try to understand the present, and move towards the future. And you can see that all this chaos that could be in the midst of this change would just prompt somebody to say, you know what? I don't feel like the leadership team really has their handle on this, or I don't have comfort or trust in them to know that they're going to successfully move us in the right direction. That could prompt somebody to change, especially if you're in growth mode or having high activity, merger and acquisition, etc. Those could be very difficult times for people. And so maybe they would want something a little more structured, something that will just continue to be a steady ride into the future and so forth. So if you're in growth mode, your next hire and those people that you're keeping on your team, make sure that they're prepared to be able to handle everything that swirls around change management and the people that are part of that change, whatever that might be. So along the way, I've hinted about work and how it's changing, and I just want to spend a few moments here talking a little bit more about the things that we need to give thought to now that work has changed for all of us, right? May not be your organization. So a lot of architecture firms that I talk to, they still want people in the offices because they believe that's the best way to collaborate, work on projects, and so forth. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. Not at all. There's other industries, kind of like Stanbaugh Ness, where we've gone pretty much 90% remote, right? Because we can. And so, you know, as we think about the impact of where different businesses are at, it may not be us specifically that have changed to that hybrid or 100% remote. It might be those organizations we're connected to, right? So it could be our vendors, it could be our clients, etc. And so we do need to still worry about it, even if our organization, we're in person or things just really haven't changed much from pre-pandemic. And so some of the critical things is, you know, do the employees trust the organization? Do they believe that the organization is headed in the right direction? Do we talk about it enough? Have we given reason for people to believe, no, we're not headed in a good place, and so forth? And so we have to think about, you know, as we're changing, and we will continue to see change as we move forward, you know, what have we or have we not communicated? Can we do a better job of just keeping people informed, even if we say, we don't have it figured out, but we're trying really hard? Just knowing that the company is committed and worried and it's a priority, that gives them comfort. And they're like, okay, I'm good. I can be patient as long as I'm getting those regular updates and so forth. And so yesterday we had a really interesting conversation internally at Stanbaugh Ness just about the impact that the past couple of years has had on companies versus individuals. So as you think about me shifting to being a remote employee, I now assume some of the burden, right? I assume the burden of making sure I have Wi-Fi turned on, my electrics turned on, I don't have distraction or people interrupting my day, and that I truly have a place set up to be successful working from home. Well, before that, the company would take care of all of that. I just had to show up, work, pack up, and then leave for the day, right? So that pressure may not be good for all individuals, especially if their role is expected to be remote. Let's say you hire somebody from a different state, right? So what can we do as an organization from a technology standpoint to ease that burden, to make sure that employees who are having different work environments are able to still successfully perform their job, and are they getting the support that's needed? So when employees don't feel, that they have the support or they can't work efficiently, they don't know what's expected of them, we can name several other things. Those are all items that will prompt somebody to leave. And I know I'm talking about a lot here in the time that we've spent already, 35 minutes, but I promise at the end, I do round it out with suggestions of what to do next, how to move forward, and so forth. So let's just spend a little bit more time here on leadership and mentorship. I've already talked about change. I've talked about, some of the things here on the screen. It's a little bit of duplication, but that's where your leaders have to understand the importance of all of these items. The executive level, you might get it, right? But does that next layer of leadership understand it and understand how critically it is important to that employee experience instead of just getting the work done? Right? Many are task driven and maybe could be motivated by that, but there's many others who want more than just completing tasks day in and day out. And it's up to us as leaders to understand, what motivates each of our team members, what potentially is getting in their way of feeling successful every single day, and what can we do to help them have a better experience? Is it because they just need to learn more, build different skills? Or are there some things we could kind of move out of their way, take off their plate, and just make it not such heavy of a burden on their shoulders that that relief is enough to keep them working with us instead of looking to do something different? And mentoring and coaching, it's not for everybody. Just because I have 20 plus years of experience or whatever that might be, doesn't mean I'm a good mentor. I have to be committed to that. I have to carve out time. I have to make that meaningful time. And whether you do it virtually or in person, it has to be thoughtful, it has to be intentional. And there is a certain skill set that's required, the ability to collaborate, the ability to ask good questions, to peel those onions back and really get to the heart of where employees are either feeling good or not so good about the work that they're doing, or the excitement they do or don't have about the future. And really figuring out how can we take them from point A into the future where everybody feels successful. And so it does take commitment, it does take discipline. And when you're picking and choosing and assigning, saying, hey, we want to create a mentorship program, just be thoughtful as to who you select to be part of that. Because just because you have manager in your title or director or you're a leader doesn't mean that you're going to be the right fit to pair up with somebody from a mentoring or coaching perspective. Sometimes it's about personality, and sometimes it's just aligning interests and maybe having some similarities as far as where somebody went to school or their journey that they've had throughout their career and their work experience and so forth. So let's go ahead and kick off the last poll question. I want to thank you all for participating. You've done a great job so far. So the topic that many of you have been waiting for is coming next. And so I'm interested to know, when is the last time you actually went through the exercise of benchmarking your compensation and salaries to the market or to your industry, etc. And so once we get close to that 80%, we'll go ahead and share the results for everybody. So it looks like many of you have this as a top priority, and that's a good thing. That really is, because if you don't have it in a good place, we saw where that could detract from somebody being motivated, right? But if you're paying stupidly high salaries, I'm going to tell you to knock it off. And we'll talk about that here coming up in the next few moments.
Okay, Christy, I'm going to close this and we'll share those results out with people.
Great. Every year, many of you are looking at that data, and I love it. I'm excited. And so I'll talk a little bit about good data versus maybe not so good data. And maybe you are questioning your approach, and there's good reason, because things have changed so much in that conversation surrounding compensation. I'll give you a little bit of insight on that as well. And if you haven't done it before, now's the time. Do it. It's worth the investment, so you know that you are paying competitively, so you can hopefully take that off the list of things you have to focus on and worry about that would cause somebody to leave your organization. So let's go ahead and dig in here. All right, compensation and benefits, it comes together, right? It should anyway. And so I want to talk about the current landscape. Where are we at? What are the things we're seeing? Where do I think we're going to be going? So we'll dig into that on the next slide here. And then I want to talk about the importance of a compensation philosophy. Why is it needed? Talk about some of those variables that you might have with benchmarking so you can just better understand the things you have to give consideration to when you are looking at data outside of your organization. And then the value of a total compensation package and why it's not just base salary or hourly rate that you should be thinking about. So yes, you've read that right. There are college graduates that are demanding at least 60,000 plus. Locally, there's an organization we're working with who has seen 70,000 plus. And you're thinking, how in the world do I compete with that? Because your other positions haven't kept pace in that way. And so you see this compression. And we saw that for the past couple of years with those who rode out the recession, right? Oftentimes you were asked to not get an increase for several years. You may have been asked to take a pay cut, and you were sometimes just happy to have a job, right? Rather than being on the unemployment line. And so that compression hasn't kept pace with where current salaries are at. I'm going to give you my opinion of why I think we're having to pay that much salary. One, it could be a little bit of catch up in some industries where they may have trailed for several years. But I also think that larger companies, out of desperation, are paying stupid money. And yep, you heard that right. I said stupid money. I think they're doing it out of desperation just to be able to satisfy the needs that they have from the vacancies. So if you have a company that has 100,000 employees and they have a 15% or 20% turnover rate, which really is kind of average, that's 20,000 people they're trying to hire every year. Well, that takes away from all the small businesses and their ability to compete with some of those salaries. So we have that. That's why you can't compete on compensation alone, and that's why there's more to the story. And so, you know, we also are monitoring what's going to happen now that people are working remotely, different parts of the country, still performing the same or similar work. How do we now handle those geographical differences? So think about a New York City or San Francisco is a lot different than a small little town you'd find in West Virginia, right? And so what is that going to do as we move forward? I don't have the answer. I'm not quite sure if that'll completely leave the equation or how we'll handle that. So I definitely have it as a priority of mine to monitor the data as we see it coming out of 2021, and then looking at any trends based upon experiences we're seeing to just monitor and figure out how we're going to handle that. So don't have an answer, but it is something I'm committed to figuring out. So if we think about compensation and we think about those salaries that are climbing significantly, yes, we have to pay competitively, but you want to take into consideration some of the variables that we'll talk about here on the next couple slides. But what's more important is you as an organization can't allow one new hire to drive you in various different ways, right? Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot, but you have to be careful not to allow the candidates to dictate or drive what you do from a compensation standpoint, because there could be things that are significantly impacted. So if you have a hiring manager who goes rogue and hires this person because I just have to have them, we've all heard that, you know, they could potentially disrupt the ability to be profitable on a project, or could significantly impact your ability to get profits on a product too, right? And so it's not just one industry or another, but we have to make sure that there's some guide rails, that the expectations are in place. Well, what is that, right? What is our philosophy? And you're going to have one that's understood by the leadership team internally. You're going to say, hey, this is where we want to be. We want to be right at average, that midpoint of the compensation data out in the industry. Maybe we want to be slightly above. Maybe we're slightly less, and we're okay with that because we have all these incentives that we offer as well. So once you start laying on the other pieces, maybe you pay overtime to salary people if they work more than 50 hours. There's other things we could talk about, but when you start layering on those things, now you have a bigger story. And so we have to be educating employees, not to the detail that some of you are fearing when I say that, but we do have to say something, because otherwise employees are going to go to salary.com, they're going to look at this compensation, see what you're paying, and they're going to say, why is there a $30,000 difference? I'm going to go find a new job. Well, they don't understand a lot of times that within there are so many other things that you as a company offer with incentives, bonuses, holidays, maybe unlimited PTO, the insurance that you pay 100% for. And so there's many other things that we can be talking about there. So, understanding what are we as an organization going to use as our compass or our guide forward. And when we're hiring or promoting, how do we make those decisions thoughtfully so we don't create significant outliers and create that imbalance that some of you might be seeing today because of some of these variables, such as the compression with the different generations and not keeping pace. So that's one exercise that we work with clients on, is really uncovering what is the philosophy we want, and then how do we communicate that outwardly to help employees understand, hey, it's more than the base salary, and even though you're getting offered significantly more over here are all the benefits we offer that they don't. And that is a key part of the retention. So I talked about many of these items here on this total compensation package page, but the one thing that I didn't mention was learning and development. How much time, labor, energy, effort, materials, etc. are we putting in and investing every single year into our team that maybe hasn't been quantified in the past? Well, if we can't quantify it, let's at least toot our own horn and start talking about it. Because if you think about the difference between a large organization where you might be kind of siloed into one specific area, as a smaller organization, you have the ability to round out and give employees exposure to a lot more types of work, project, initiatives, etc. And so that's all part of that conversation, is that, look, we're invested and we are, helping you be on, or allowing you to be on this project or initiative, knowing that we can't bill it out, or we're not going to see necessarily a return to the profit line based on that. But it's showing our commitment that we're all, okay with not being quite as profitable or having as big of a margin, because we want you to learn and grow, because that return will come years from now for you as a person and us as an organization. And so taxes too, right? We pay a lot of money in payroll taxes, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, etc. And employees don't understand sometimes how much that truly is. And so many companies will do a nice compensation statement. And while there's a lot of effort that goes into preparing that, technology can make it easier. If you don't have the ability or somebody who can take the time to do that, at least be talking about it through those educational sessions, so people truly understand, look, it's not just that salary you see out on salary.com. And even if they see a dollar amount connected to benefits, what exactly is that number representing, right? I'm pretty sure it's not going to be apples to apples comparison. And if it is, well, then maybe we need to do a little more research and benchmark again to make sure that we are keeping pace with where our industry is going. So when we think about benchmarking, some of you have already done it and you're very familiar, so I apologize if this is repetitive for you. But for those of you who aren't quite familiar with benchmarking, why is it important and so forth, is because we want to really take a look at where is the industry going that we are competing within. We want to keep our talent, but then when we're looking to hire, what should we be paying? And so you can't always go out to the industry data and look at job title, right? I kind of describe it as lipstick, quite honestly. You have to get to that next layer where you're looking at the roles and responsibilities and so forth. So you want to make sure you get as close to apples comparison as you can. And then you have to take into consideration firm size, right? Large mega firms can maybe pay more base salary than the smaller firms, working on different types of projects or different product lines, etc. And so that's a critical piece, that firm size. It's a very important piece. You want to make sure that you're comparing yourself to similar sized organizations, similar work, and so forth. And then region, again, that's still one of those that will remain to be seen as we move forward, how the geographic region really truly impacts. But then you also got to look at, years of experience, not necessarily the time that somebody's been with you, but what's the time that they've committed to their profession. And then think about, where are they at on your performance scale? Are they above average, at average, or below? And so that could tell a big story, especially if you have some outliers. And so pulling this all together, it takes a, a pretty in-depth analysis to be done, but when it's done right, you now have the ability to make more informed decisions, hopefully prevent some of those outliers from occurring unintentionally. Sometimes you might intentionally decide to have somebody step outside of the range, but in working with clients, we help them put those guide rails, look at the midpoint, where people are paying, and think about that philosophy. Are we going to be under or over? And then from there, establish ranges for hiring managers to make those decisions. And so this is a very expansive exercise, especially if you haven't ever done it before. But right now, we have to be positioned in a place where we can talk about compensation in a broad way to help employees understand, hey, here's where we're at as an organization. That way they are doing the right comparison and not just thinking that they have to switch jobs because they think they're going to make more. There's so much more to that total experience and total package for individuals. So while I kept this at the end, because compensation, as we saw on Hertzberg's motivational theory, if we pay stupid money, we're not going to get that 1-to-1 ratio of extra effort. Now, if we're paying below and people don't believe that they're being paid fairly, that's where it detracts from the motivation, and that's what prompts them to go look for another job. But the compensation is not the only piece, and that's why I said, you know, we have all these other ingredients that are so critically important to the retention strategy that you have. And there's going to be places that you're right in line and probably keeping pace ahead of many others, but there might be 1 or 2 things that you could just think about doing a little bit differently. So where do you start? How do you know? Well, it's going to be a little scary, but yes, you do want to ask your employees, and don't ask them when they're leaving, when they decide to quit and they're walking out the door. Somebody shared with me, well, now you ask since I'm leaving, why didn't you ask me 6 months ago, right? And so, you know, this company I'm working with is trying to figure out, okay, how do we prevent another one of those stories from happening? And so ask people. It's like a stay interview. Some have coined it. Maybe it's a very simple survey. I'm not saying send out an elaborate survey and collect a bunch of data that you can't do anything with. Take these topics that we've talked about today, pick 1 or 2, and just get your employees to talk about it. Hey, where do you believe we're doing a really good job? Where do you believe that we need to do better? Is there anything we should stop doing? Anything we should start doing? And when you open those or ask those open-ended questions, you're going to get a lot of good information. And so what I definitely recommend you do is once you collect all that information, you don't have to adopt it all. So don't think that just because somebody shares a piece of feedback, you have to act on it. But what you do have to do is tell your team, hey, this is the information we received. Here are the items we can act on. Here are the ones we aren't able to, at least not this year, maybe next year. And here's why. Talk about it, because now your employees feel like they're heard. They know that you're going to continue to ask for their insights and thoughts, and that you're taking action based upon the collective whole, and really trying to do something different and better. And so I know it's scary. You don't want the complainers, but you know, if you can't do a full survey, then you know what you do? You pick out your A-list. You know who they are. You can rattle them off the top of your head probably right now. And if you can't, your hiring managers can. And that's what you need to ask. Ask those A players who you're afraid to lose, who are the probably above average performers, and ask them these questions. Focus your energy there, because they're going to give you some really probably balanced information that you can act on and really make a difference, and hopefully elevate the way in which you retain people and that experience that you provide to them. And so you do want to continue to look at your industry. Are there things that the industry is offering? No, I don't think that every little decision about a pool table or pizza party that you should follow and chase it. No, just watch those trends and monitor, especially those that you know tend to pull talent away from you or pull from your competition. What are they doing and what's sticking? Definitely monitor that, and just continue to keep this at the forefront of your conversations. Like I said, that noodle is infinity. So we should always be talking about retention. We should always be thinking about it and saying, what else can we do to make sure we don't lose our top talent? So I am done talking, and we've saved 6 minutes here for some question and answer. So while Heather gets that queued up for me to let me know if there are any questions, I just want to share with you that after this session, you will be invited to participate in a survey where we collect information from you as well. What are you most interested in? What do you not want to hear any more about? What can we do differently, better? And are there specific, unique questions you didn't feel comfortable asking broadly in today's session that we could reach out to you and just have that one-on-one conversation? Our door's always open. We like to collaborate. We like to talk with you and just help you get better and your organization succeed. Heather, are there any
Well,
questions?
Christy, we have a quiet group today, which is fine. So I would just encourage everyone, as Christy said, you will be getting a survey and you will have the opportunity to submit questions on that. If you think of something later on or just didn't feel comfortable asking it today. Oh, wait, hold on. We're getting some questions.
Okay, go ahead. I love it.
Okay, how can you measure success in recruitment? That's a great question.
Yeah, how long do they stay with your organization? So a couple measures of success, and this is a great question that I'll be sure to include in our next webinar. You know, are you getting a lot of people showing interest? So here's a real quick example. I have an organization that I help find talent for their team, and as soon as I mention their company name, they're like, yes, I want to talk about it. I don't even have to fight to get their attention. Then I have other companies where it's hard to get anybody to talk to me. And so you have to wonder about their brand. And so having a strong brand, strong presence out there so people know who you are and what you do and what you do from a culture standpoint, all those things are indicators that, hey, we are in a good place to hire people. We are getting attraction. But another key piece is thinking about, you know, you're finding the people, how long are they staying? And if they're not staying, why? Because maybe there's something with that onboarding that just isn't clicking. So your onboarding is another key measure of your recruiting.
Thanks, Christy. Another question. If employees have already found higher salaries elsewhere, how do you make your total compensation story attractive?
Yeah, it really comes down to what else can you offer. And it varies from one company to another. And I apologize, I can't give a blanket, but really understanding what you offer. What are those key things you know that you do better? So, you know, there's companies out there who pay 100% of the medical contribution for you as an individual. Well, right there, not many companies are in a place financially to do that. So that would be one thing that I would sing out loud. And so for you who have asked that question, if you want to reach out to me individually and just share a little bit more of what you do offer, maybe I can help you get creative and be able to leverage those standout items. Just because I've seen and heard, you know, different standout items from benefits to incentives. That's another really good, important one as a standout, especially if it's clearly defined how the employee has the ability to influence it. That's a critical one.
Thanks, Christy. What are the best tools to utilize for compensation market studies?
Yeah, so you definitely want to go to your industry sources and make sure you truly understand all the industry sources out there. So depending on what industry you're in, figure out who does the salary data, what are those survey tools, and figure out the pros and cons. Ultimately, you'll probably find two that you'll need to lean on because usually one isn't fully exhaustive, either because they didn't collect enough data on your specific firm size or your region. So you might have to use two, but figuring out for your organization, the type of work you do, the size that you are, what are those best tools? So I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to know, you know, architecture and engineer, we're very familiar with that, manufacturing, construction. We have, you know, pretty good insight as to the tools that are reliable. And then those like salary.com that we probably wouldn't put too much credibility on just because of the broadness of, you know, the data that they collect.
Okay, I think we have time maybe for one more to get in under the wire. Do you have a simple guide or tips for mentoring? We talk about this a lot, but it's difficult to get moving. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, it definitely is something that you need the person to be interested in. And that's the rub sometimes with different generations. One generation, and I'm not going to pick on anyone specifically, they might say, well, I had to figure it out on my own. Why can't they? Right? But if you put it in a way where they're leaving a legacy, and if the individual can see that being their child, their grandchild, how would they want to receive that mentoring and coaching? So first, you have to get willing participants. You can't force it or it'll never be successful. But getting them to understand the value and the impact that their mentoring and coaching can have might get them to see it in a new way and then be committed and disciplined to actually follow through on that. And sometimes one person might have multiple mentors, just depending on the skills they're trying to learn. Maybe it's financial acumen, maybe it's a skill or trade. So you really have to take a look at who needs that growth, and then is there somebody you could pair with them? And if not, in your organization specifically, maybe through an association that you partner with, they might have a mentorship program or have individuals that are semi-retired that would be interested in forming that type of relationship as a mentor or coach.
Thanks, Christy. And I apologize. We do have some other questions, and we will absolutely make sure that we get you all an individual response to those, but we do want to be respectful of your time today.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you being so attentive. Hopefully you're able to walk away with a couple key insights that will allow you to elevate your retention strategy going forward. Thank you.